Hey there, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Dig. Hey, I wanted to respond to the video that Ruslan did. I believe it was a couple of days ago regarding why he would never work at another church again. And I want to be clear on a couple of things here before I go any further. One, I don't dislike Ruslan. Two, I don't even know Ruslan personally enough to tell you whether or not I would like him or I wouldn't like him. Three, I do like his information. That's why I was watching it. I love his videos and different things along those lines. But he had made mention of a couple of things, excuse me, that I think will be important for us to have some conversation about. And the reason why I think it would be important for us to have some conversation about these things is simply because I feel like he made mention of why he would never work at another church again. I feel like the thing where I want to help you and where it could be dangerous is if you are at a church and you've never thought about any of these things, but you hear this video could actually get you to start questioning people and ruin a relationship because you're starting to think that perhaps these people aren't doing the right things with the finances of this church and different things along those lines. You can really kind of maybe jump into that really quickly and get in trouble. And so, having been a former lead pastor, I wanted to share my 2 cents on this and really just add to this. This is not a rebuttal in any kind of way or shape or form or, come here telling you Ruslan is wrong. That's Ruslan's experience. Just like this is my experience I'm getting ready to share with you. So I certainly don't want you to believe that I'm minimizing his experience or in any way, shape or form. And that's his channel. He gets to post whatever he would like to post on his channel regarding that. But let me share this with you because, again, I think it's dangerous. And this is where relationships, again, can get really shaky and really bad. Because if you're a pastor and you have somebody all of a sudden who's just on your team, you're doing well, things are right, there's nothing to be questioned, and then all of a sudden you listen to this video and then all of a sudden you start questioning your pastor or the leaders of the church, they're going to be wondering where that's coming from and why you now all of a sudden have this ideal in your mind that you need to know more than they've revealed to you. Because two things. One, Ruslan said he worked for that church and he said he wouldn't. But my fear is for people who listen to that, who just attend those churches, who might have a seed planted in their mind. I want to run and ask them about this. Two, not every church is like that. Ruslan's ideal that he will never work for another church, that's completely a part of his experience. I will say this. In my own opinion, just to be fair, I think there are plenty of ministries that work above board and do all of the right things. They give financial reports. I did that in my own church. They outsource their finances. I did that in my own church. They make sure that they're reporting everything that they're supposed to report back again to the IRS. They have a board. That board sets their salaries. That board sets their spending. They have to have approvals for things that they purchase in and out of those churches. So there are churches that are doing a really good job. And that's really kind of what I wanted to pop on here and share with you as in addition to what Ruslan was saying, okay? Because again, I don't dislike Ruslan. I don't know him. So I'm just here to share this with you. I want to tell you that I know that there are churches out there that are doing the right things. There are churches out there that have the integrity. They have the character. Their leaders do. They're held accountable. And then you have the other churches, like what Ruslan was saying, the one that he went to, the place that he attended, the one that he would not why he would not go again. That's his experience. Now, I've been on both sides of that coin. I've seen that in a church, poor management, poor leadership, different things along those lines. And then, of course, I led my own. I planted 2 ministries, so I was very much aware of what the accountability process was. And not only that I want to be accountable, I made everybody else on the team accountable by sharing with them, even taking them to programs and things things along those lines that helped us understand what we could and couldn't do as a church, that we would stay in line with state laws and different things along those lines and keep our integrity there. But I'm going to say something to you that I think is important. There are good churches out there. There are good churches out there doing good things. And that's the only thing that I wish I would have heard from the video, is that he would have made mention of the fact that there are some amazing churches. And if I missed that, forgive me. If he said something along those lines, I didn't catch that, but I felt like that was the missing part of it. I think that there are really good ministries out there. I think there are good ministries to work for out there. I think there are good people out there. Now, again, I'm feeling them on a lot of that stuff, because I'm going to be honest with you. I think that there's more places that you can put finances as and instead of putting them into buildings. That's just my opinion. So he and we couldn't agree more on that. I believe that when you have a building that you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a year, and it's sitting there except for 2 days out of the week, when you go in and you have service, and that building isn't being used for anything else in that community, whether you're doing ESL classes, GED classes, you're doing family life services, whatever it is, you're allowing for graduations for smaller schools who don't have the capacity to come in there and to at their own schools or whatnot, things along those lines, meetings for your community, all that kind of good stuff. I think the churches should be a hub in the community where people are able to come and use that facility, and the people who attend there and faithfully sow and give can see that, hey, the community needs us. Without us, this community doesn't have these options and these opportunities. Now, don't get me wrong. I know some people would say, yeah, but there are people who do stuff and they wouldn't let a church in. We got to change our mind about that. We just got to change our mindset about that. We're kingdom people. So I think that we have to look at that in a different way. We don't do what other people do to us. We function differently. And so when we get into a place that God opens a door for us, that church should be missed in that community if it is no longer there. It should be missed. That church should feel differently, should make a difference in that community. And people should feel like, man, we miss this place, or we need this place. And they should be able to come to that pastor, those leaders, and want to be a part of that, connect with. It should kind of be the hub of the community. Now, with that being said, again, I want to take it a little bit further and tell you that, a lot of pastors just simply don't have levels of accountability. So I wanted to talk about that, because he talked about how there in this ministry, there was mismanagement of funds and et cetera, and they had to fire the guy. And he still goes there, which I think is a cool thing. He still attends that ministry. So I thought that was really cool. And that's also a testament to him, too, that you can step away from a portion of it and still remain and be supportive in different things along those lines, maybe just not that close and connected as he was. But a lot of pastors they do need to have levels of accountability in place, so that they do the right things, that the right things are done. But I also wanted to say too that, again, oftentimes, I believe the story went that one of the people, the executive pastor, resigned because he kind of told on the other pastor and so on and so forth. And I think that all of that just gets dangerous. All of that gets messy. But again, I want to say to you, that is not every church. And I think it's important that you understand that. Now, what should you do? Here's a couple of things that I think you should do in addition to what Ruslan said. Here's a couple of things I think if you are a member of a church, I think that you should ask, if you're going to join that church, you should know what the mission is, what the vision is. You should know what it's like in terms of their financial records, how they share their finances. You should ask about that. These are things that you should ask about before you get involved, so that you don't start to criticize it after you get involved and then find out that they're not necessarily super transparent. I believe that is the job of the individual to make sure they do that. I believe that also for somebody who wants to work on a church staff, you should ask them about their levels of transparency concerning their finances back to the congregation, to their board, etc. You should know, you should find out what the controls are within that organization before you join it. Because I'm going to tell you, as a leader, there is nothing worse than having somebody come to your church, jump on board, get involved, and then start talking to you about something they wish you did, whatever, and you just don't really have time for it. You should also be in a ministry that has some kind of introductory class into their ministry. Now, I personally did this. I don't know how many other ministries did this, but when I was pastoring, I did this, okay? We brought people in. They came in before service. We brought in other leaders. Other leaders talked to them. They expressed and explained our culture, who we were, what we did, etc. We talked to them about where we're going, what we're doing, vision-wise, so on and so forth. We explained to them everything about our ministry, that we had a board, that we had an accountability board, etc., that we give back into the community, all this other kind of good stuff. What our expectations were for those people that became members, what our expectation was for those people who started to serve. I also wanted to share this with you. If you ever go to a church and you decide to become a volunteer leader, or you get on staff, church is no different than when you own a business. I'm not saying the church is a business. I'm saying it's no different. If you're an employee, then they expect you to be there. I expected people that were being compensated to be there. That was why they were compensated, because they needed to be available for what it was they got hired to do. Now, in fairness to what Ruslan said, I just want to make this clear. He said that he was more interested. He discovered he was more interested in being an entrepreneur. I think that's a beautiful thing. That's another thing that I want to encourage you to do. Before you take that step, you need to make sure, because you can't go to that church and say, well, these people are requiring too much time from me. No. Absolutely not. So if anybody tells me anything different, I'd say you're out of your mind. Even if you're an entrepreneur and somebody works for you, you expect them to be where they're supposed to be. But if you work for a church, they expect you to be there. They expect you to be on time. They expect you to be available. And yes, they expect you sometimes to go above and beyond and do things that may not be in your job description. But doesn't that happen at your job anyway? It just does. Now, unless you control your own time, right? And I'm not talking, because most people will go into this whole entrepreneur thing. This is just as a side note, because I too have 2 businesses that I own. So I know what I'm talking about from experience. Even if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a small business owner and you're not some wealthy person who you could just pass something along to in your business, you're probably doing more work as an entrepreneur than you were when you were working for somebody. I pretty much can promise you that. But I don't think it's fair to say to a church that, hey, I want my own time. Well, then you shouldn't work for that church. You have to become an independent entrepreneur where you get to make your time, your schedule, when you want to do it and how you want to do it. I don't think that it is okay for you to go and tell that leader, well, why do you need me here? Well, because you are employed here. And these are the conditions in which you were employed. If you want to fight against that, I'm not really sure that you should have been there in the first place. You didn't want a job. You should have just stayed as a consultant. These are things that you should do. You should ask, you should say, hey, it's probably better for me to consult with you than it is for me to work with you. Those kind of things. So some of it is on you just as a person, and you can't blame that pastor or that leader for them wanting you to be available to the ministry, because that is what their focus is, while your focus would have been somewhere else. So again, I didn't want to go too long in this. I just really felt like there was more things that were more nuanced to this situation. And I wanted you to be clear on a couple of things that Ruslan said. Ruslan said that he was working for that church and he would never work for another one. My fear is if you attend a church and you hear this video and you start to think, well, maybe this church is doing wrong things, and then you start to question these people without really any knowledge of whether they're doing anything right or wrong, I think that can be dangerous, and then you can ruin relationships and also somebody's good name in the community by bringing up these kinds of questions, because nowadays everybody posts everything on YouTube or on Instagram or on Twitter or TikTok, whatever it is, they're putting it out there, just letting it be known, hey, this is something that's problematic. So I just wanted to encourage you in that, to make sure that you have some balance in what you heard from Ruslan, which again, almost all of that I agreed with. Again, I think churches spend way too much money in other things as opposed to things that are important. I also think that churches should really drill down on what is important and what they are going to do, who they need on their staff, all these kind of things to make sure that it functions and that it grows. But I also think that you as a church member or a potential staff member have an obligation and this responsibility to ask the questions before you get on board, because getting on board and then becoming a dissenter is not a good look. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Y'all be blessed. Talk to you soon.